off again.
Now, there's nothing like setting up your own anticlimax.
That's what she said.
But she wasn't the only one. Okay, so, given the theme of the evening, I've got something with a vaguely nautical connection here. Okay, there will be some religious themes through the course of this set, and I just want to specify, given what Joe did earlier, that I'm an atheist too. I'm a non-practicing atheist. You know, I stopped once I got really good at it. Okay, now this is a representation of a compass. You know, it's not a real compass because it was too big. And if it were to be put to the test, it would sort of be found wanting in the waterproofing department. Okay? So it's a symbolic representation of a compass, but as you'll notice, there's a J here on top, and that's because this is meant to be a representation of a moral compass. Okay? Now, because a moral compass is an idiomatic concept, this doesn't work on several levels. But what I'm hoping is that you'll have the imagination to sort of stay with me on this rickety rope bridge till the very end. And if you don't, you'll hopefully just think to yourself, it must be meta, and nod wisely and feel okay. All right? So the J's here for Jesus. So the J is for Jesus, and that automatically means that the S is for Satan. The E and W are less clear, because you see, this is sort of the crosswire, the tightrope of moral ambiguity, right? Things that could go either way. What would Jesus do? What would Satan do? There's that fine line there that actually illustrates why this symbolic representation really doesn't work. Okay? Now, there's the J for what would Jesus do. If any of you are Daily Mail readers, you may want to know, why isn't it M for Muhammad, or M for Moses, or B for Buddha? And the reason is that none of those religions have the kind of PR department that came up with a puerile strapline like, what would Jesus do? Thinking that our followers are never going to be able to assimilate the accumulated teachings of our text, to be able to make their own sort of considered moral decisions, and would instead have to rely upon a bracelet or a tattoo that said, what would Jesus do? Because if you can't quite in your own mind know what the moral thing to do is, for example, let's say with the refugee crisis or the situation in Syria, what is really going to help you is to put yourself in the mind of a 2,000-year-old historical figure. Because clearly you have that ability, even though you can't make your own decisions. And then be able to choose the right moral path. Right? I mean, at the best, what you're going to be able to do is, what did Jesus do? Right? We're going to work on a very simple rule-based moral system because Jesus did this. And therefore, maybe I ought to do the same thing. Now, if you use the right kind of eyebrow movement, it gives the impression that all this is actually very carefully staged and not an elaborate ruse to try and remember where this was going to go. The fact is, if you actually asked Jesus about the refugee situation or the situation in Syria, what he would probably say is, I don't quite have the geopolitical or temporal context to make a considered response. But I would advise that you err on the side of basic humanity. And if you ask Moses or Muhammad or Buddha, they would say, what he said. The thing is, this is the kind of wishy-washy, namby-pamby liberal horse shit that we simply cannot be doing within this time. Okay? We need a sort of clarity of moral purpose and moral direction. And this is why I'm suggesting that actually what we need is a different kind of morality. And my suggestion is, what would Nigel Farage do? WWMD. Right? Because Nigel Farage, in that situation, would say, no, let me speak. Immigration is a serious problem in this country. Our society is breaking down. We simply can't be having people coming into this country, and we can't be interfering in the affairs of other nations that, when we have to look after our own borders. And if they have HIV, they definitely shouldn't come over. Now, what that helps you establish is what we call the bigoted north. And then what you do is that, right? And that sort of helps you establish where you want to go. It's much of the same way that you'd use a compass to go south. I know there was a great scam, I think, in the US where you could buy a compass to go north, and for a little extra, you'd get a second one that will help you go south. Right? But no, this is how we'd use, Nigel Farage as our sort of moral compass. And I think that kind of clarity is what we really need. Now, you may say that what I'm doing here is that I'm caricaturing this man's opinions and views. I'm doing him a disservice. I'm vilifying him. I'm actually just using him as a straw man to make what is essentially an overstretched, poorly thought out, and ultimately fallacious argument, armed with a piece of cardboard. Right? And to that I would ask you, what would Nigel do? Thank you.
We actually do get a break, so please go by line in the back there.